Welcome to the What's Next podcast. On today's episode, Mike and I sit down with Julia Shelley. We learn about her role and position with the UN and her passion for fitness. So if you're ready, buckle up and let's go. All right, so let's get this thing going. Welcome to the What's Next podcast, sponsored by Frontline Ford and Brentwood Livery. Hopefully more sponsors to come in that area. My name is Bryan Stevens. I'm here with my good friend. I guess I can call you a good friend.
Right now, we're still good friends right now.
Right.
Michael Hectus, how you doing, guys?
Awesome. We've gone through 3 shows now, telling little bits of our stories and a little bit of involvement there. But we promised you guys out there that we're going to bring on some pretty incredible guests with just some amazing stories. And we're going to kick it off today with a very special person. Good friend of yours, Mike?
Yeah, well, we're going to bring her here, Julia Shelley. How you doing, Julia? Good to see you.
Hey, thank you. Good to see you too.
Yeah, so Julia and I met, well, she was a lot younger. I was like 51 when I did my first fitness competition or bodybuilding, and she was doing her figure competition. It was a figure you did?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. Well, I started in both fitness and figure, trying to figure out where I belonged. And
right on, cool.
Yeah,
well, I'm going to just
figure.
give you a little background. She's a WBFF fitness champion, a woman's transformational coach, and for the last 10 years, you've been working with the United Nations as a flight attendant, which is unbelievable. So crazy. I'm looking forward to chatting a bit about that. But yeah, just to talk, we met, like I say, we met in the on the fitness stage or on the bodybuilding stage in that back, it's 12 years ago now, I think. I don't know if you realize that, but I had to do the math. It was 12 years ago.
Yeah, I think so. Well, at least my first show, and if it was around that time that we met, I think it was October 2011.
Yeah. Exactly.
It was the first one.
Yeah, I did my very first one, and I'll throw mine. I was 51 at the time, so we won't throw yours out. Let people start doing the math.
That's okay.
But yeah, I was 51 at the time. Was my first competition, and I had something I'd never done before. But I was one of those things where I wanted to see if I could actually commit myself to the off season, on season, and the training and everything else, and the mental side of the whole thing. So it was setting some big goals. So I just wondered, have you always set goals for yourself as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I think that this going through competing in fitness events kind of set it to the next level. You know, I mean, I've always been really goal oriented, but I think in the last 10 years more so. And I think a lot of it came from competing from those first few years, because once you do that feeling of accomplishing it and knowing that you can stick to something so tough, and day in and day out, just every day, you know, you get your 2 workouts in most of the times, the food, the entire process of it all, you know, and then the rest of life that happens around it, of course. But once you can accomplish that, you just feel so clear in your goals. It's like, yeah, I can do anything.
I think that's really important, Julia, for people to know, people to hear, because, you know, they just see the finished product, right? They see you up on the stage doing your thing, but it's, I really liked your point there about, you know, being able to set goals and obtain them. Obviously, when you go on the stage, you want to be the champion or the number one, but I think there's a bigger goal there, a bigger championship, in that you've actually accomplished something and you're able to stick to it and overcome whatever it's the fear of being on stage or just not being able to stick to a program. So I think that's awesome on your part.
Yeah, and that's the big thing too. Like you said, getting on the stage is one thing, but it's the leading up to that. The diet, I think, and the mental strength that you need is huge. Right. I mean, I was on the golf course with buddies back then, and they're all getting their beers, and I've got my little chicken, and I've got my, you know, all my food prepped for me, and I'm eating food on the golf course, and they're all drinking their beers and that. And that was the tough part, is mentally staying focused on, I've got a goal set and here's what I'm going to do. So you'd be the same. You travel a lot, so that's got to be difficult.
Yeah. Right. Well, I've been doing it with traveling the entire time. And I'd have to say that it's funny that I've worked with the UN for 10 years. And because I got the job with the UN actually right after that very first show, right after we met. So it was the following month that I had my interview, and I started a couple months later going to Afghanistan. So every show since that first one has been done from a different war zone, right? So it's just like they've gone together. It's crazy.
Julia, just you know, walk through for people. Like, you go from sort of one extreme right to the other, like being up on the stage competing, and then you transition quickly? Or is that something you always wanted to do?
Oh yes, absolutely. That was a huge goal. I didn't know in what capacity or how it would happen, but it's not how I imagined it. It's kind of weird how I fell into it. I've been a flight attendant for a long time. I became a flight attendant when I was, I think, 19 years old. And then I went back to school later on in life, I think around 27, 28, right before we met, is when I went back to school. But I wanted to work for the UN, mostly in like a humanitarian liaison officer type of role. But I wasn't sure how to go about it. So I went back to school for policing, and then I was applying to the RCMP and going through all of that. Before that, just goal setting, just a fun bucket list thing to do. I started my pilot's license. And when I was doing my pilot's license, one of my instructors there ended up working for the UN. So later on, when I was in school for policing, he's like, he writes me and goes, what's going on? Why is your Facebook so boring these days?
It's funny how many people creep us on Facebook, right?
It was really random because I'd only met him a couple times. Like, he was my engines instructor in ground school. So I was like, oh, thanks. Like normally, you're adventuring and traveling the Middle East and stuff. And I said, well, yeah, but right now I'm in school and I'm not traveling all over, and I'm going to school for policing and everything. It's like, why? What's your goal? You're always traveling. This doesn't sound like you. And I said, yeah, well, I want to work for the UN and eventually move into that role. So I will be traveling again, but in a different role.
Wow.
And he's like, you know what? Just come work for us now. You've already got what it takes. Come in. I'll introduce you to everyone. Apply as a flight attendant. Go over and see what it's like before you go through the ranks. Because with the RCMP or military police, however I went about it, I would have ended up taking a few years to get to the point of going overseas with them. So I said, okay, sure, I'll try it out. We'll see what it's like. And if anything, it will be really good on my resume. And then I'll go back and apply to the RCMP. And I ended up loving it, like absolutely loving it. So I'm still doing it.
Yeah, and I think that's the part there where like I say, again, when I talk about creeping on Facebook, but following your career or following your journey through Facebook and watching you train at some of these makeshift gyms that you guys put together. I mean, it was incredible. So you just said your first tour was to where then?
In Kandahar, Afghanistan.
Wow. What was that like?
I was nervous. I was really scared at first. But I didn't think I was going there. When I applied, I thought I would be all over Africa at first, and I remember right after training, in the interview, we're mostly talking about Africa. And right after training, they're like, so how would you feel about going to Afghanistan? Just like,
oops.
I didn't even think that was like on my radar. It didn't occur to me because they only had a couple bases there and most of the bases were in Africa. So I thought, what are the chances, right? And but I'm new at the job, and you don't want to say no, but at the same time want to be careful. And so I had friends in the Canadian Forces, and a couple that had done tours. So I called them up. I'm like, what's it like? Like, help prepare me. And yeah, it was okay. I mean, that helped a little bit. I said yes, of course. I think the biggest worry was Kandahar was known for rocket attacks. So that was just something I kind of wanted to be ready for. What was that going to be like? And I remember when I first got there really being anxious for that. And it didn't happen for 2 weeks. It was the second week, 2 weeks into my arrival in Kandahar. Finally, the first rocket attack hit. I was on my toes, always thinking, oh, here we go. First interruption. Okay.
Hey, puppy.
Hey, Lucy. Okay. So my niece, Lucy. Hi, sweetie. Hi.
That's awesome.
And so, 2 weeks into the tour, it was around lunchtime, the first rocket attack hit. And I was sleeping. I slept through it. We had a night flight. I was working the night before, and I came home. We did a red eye, and we came home around 7 a.m. and I fell asleep, and I just slept right through the whole thing. And I remember when I got up for like a late lunch after, and the pilots were like, "Are you okay?" They were so nervous for me because they knew I was on edge for the first rocket attack. And was like, yeah, why? What's up? Your first rocket attack. Did you run to the bunker? Where did you go? And I was like, we had a rocket. Like, I slept. I was really tired, and I just slept through the whole thing.
Holy mackerel!
So Julia, just back up for us a little bit. Like,
back up.
It's intriguing me here right now. So, training wise, how can they?
Yeah.
How did they train you for what you were about to be exposed to?
Oh, in that sense, no.
No.
You get a brief. No, you arrive on tour and you have a briefing.
That's
it's just like,
yeah,
that's it. It's kind of like read ahead before you go. There's some.
Here's a pamphlet.
Slides. Yeah,
all the pretty pictures of the water and
yeah.
That's what I kind of thought happened. So I wanted to hear from you. Yeah.
And we're not armed. We're civilian, right? So I'm sure military is a lot. I would hope that they're a lot more prepared to go over, but civilians, at least I was definitely not prepared. So I went over and they just kind of run you through, when you arrive on base, what it's like. Of course, rocket attacks in Kandahar were the biggest worry. So they said, okay, this is what you do. You hit the ground. You stay until the sirens stop and until they say rocket's cleared, you're supposed to hit the ground. And when it's safe, run to a bunker. Wow. So wherever you are, and that's pretty much it. That was the briefing. It was just kind of like, these are the bunkers, try to get there. And
I think more than anything, that's why I wanted to have you on here is because I know Bryan's story and we talked about it on one of the other podcasts, but being a critical care paramedic, but also a gym rat, and you're kind of in the same thing. I mean, Tui is, I think, the passion for serving others and helping others was, the top of mind for you guys. And then the gym is your kind of your release. But I know the struggles Bryan went through, but I mean, you just recently I can't go back to Facebook, but it's social media where we get to follow each other and at least see how everybody's journey's going. But you just recently came out about, taking the step back because of, some of the lifestyle, what it was all about. So, sleeping through your first bomb attacks, but I'm sure you didn't sleep through all of them.
Oh, no. Yeah. And that was, when I went to Kandahar, also keep in mind, I think I arrived May 2012 and I was there for the first year. And then I did the next year in northern Afghanistan, Mazar. So different worries there. But it was a lot less when I got there. So it was really busy with rocket attacks before I got there. When I got there, as I said, there wasn't any for 2 weeks and then there was, and it'd be kind of random, so I was super nervous, but then when it happened, it's kind of the feeling around it is like, it's just like luck of the draw. Like it's a bad way to think, but it's super random. That they get into the base, and if they get into the base, that you never know. It's you're okay unless you're directly in its path. Usually, what the Taliban would do is they would actually take the explosive device out of the rockets that would come into base, and they would fill it with shrapnel instead. So it would be usually American quarters or anything they could, as kind of a joke. Wow. They put American quarters in, and so when the rocket would hit, that the shrapnel, the quarters or whatever was in it, that would fly out. So they weren't always lethal. They could be, but it was that, a quarter might fly out and take off your finger or something like that. Right. So it was the impact of it. They took the explosive devices out because they used it on the roadside bombs. So that's where they would, so the military, so I was safer because I was in base, but the military that would patrol and go outside and drive around Afghanistan were in, a lot more danger. Mm-hmm. So I always thought, I never wanted to say that I had any worries or, later on when I came out and talked about PTSD and everything, I was really hesitant to do that sort of thing because I always had this idea, well, yeah, but I'm safer than them. Somebody else is in a worse situation than me. I can't say that this affects me. These guys are out there patrolling. It could be worse, but you don't give yourself credit for what you're actually going through and what's becoming your norm, And so it added up over the years. It was first it was rocket attacks and then there were lots of other worries in Afghanistan, but then it turned into going to Africa and then Sudan. I was there during the Sudan uprising, and we got evacuated to Darfur. We were living in Khartoum, but the capital city, but Khartoum at that point ended up being more dangerous, so they evacuated us to Darfur, which is usually the more dangerous spot. So the things just became normal. It's just like over the years in different war zones, I never wanted to say that it was affecting me because I felt, there's people that their jobs are to protect some of us, and it can only affect them. It can't affect me. So I never wanted to say that, but yeah, it's pretty scary stuff,
well,
that you're just
hit on the head.
Getting used to.
Yeah, Brian, that's...
Oh, yeah, the light bulbs are
I'm just
going
going to
off
say,
in my head here.
I'm looking at the two of you going, okay, that's a story that I've heard before.
So, yeah, it's really interesting for you to put it in that context, Julia, that it became normal.
Yeah.
And that's where it I wrote it down here because it just... that's what happens with so many of our first responders, that it just becomes normal to deal with those things, see those things, see, hear, feel, touch, smell those things. I hope I'm not re-traumatizing you right now, but, it does. It comes down to that we just start putting that into such a normal context in our lives that's having such a profound change to us mentally and sometimes physically, and those our loved ones, our friends, our family are all around us are seeing the change, and sometimes we don't see that.
Yeah, I'd get feedback like that all the time. I thought I was coping just fine, but others at home that had seen me change over the years, they're like,
so when you say coping, Julia, what were you doing to cope? Nothing that bad, like nothing, drugs or alcohol, nothing like that. That's never been me. I would say, to be honest, that fitness coinciding the years that I was in the war zones, coincidentally also being the years that I've been competing. I think that has something to do with it, because I was actually just talking about this last night with some friends, but I think that in competing, to be honest, not everybody, it depends, but there's many cases where you see in the competition world that sometimes people are doing it as they've channeled one bad habit into a good habit, but another, like there's people that have a past with drugs or alcohol, any kind of addiction issues, and they just channel it into a better addiction, a healthier addiction, So there's sometimes we see that sometimes, right? Not always. Sometimes it's eating disorders. And a way to come out of the eating disorder is to track their macros and to help, like, to practice more self-love. And so it's like, I find competing was a bit of a coping mechanism for me, because some people have used it that way, in that it was a positive outlet. So some people have left behind either drugs or alcohol or a bad relationship with food or themselves, and found competing and found like this goal setting. I found it as a positive outlet for me as well. It was like, that was my goal setting, something to keep me focused on tour, So it was some sort of normalcy, because nothing in my life was normal. And that was the only thing that I could control. So. No, exactly, Julia. And for, relating it back to me, and this is where some of the changes that people were seeing, that I just kept myself busy all the time. Like,
yeah,
if I sat down for 2 minutes on the couch, I'd fall asleep. And so I just didn't allow myself, but I didn't see the change that was happening. And again, I'm going to go back to that normalizing things. That's what I did. I was just so busy, and I just thought that was normal.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and it's amazing how our loved ones, our friends, the people that are the closest to us, will recognize that, will see that, and how we can be so quick to disregard it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I completely relate to that. What you've just said about keeping busy. And cause it is hard to slow down. And I think that's why I started to realize it during those COVID quarantines. It was because we had no choice. We were, you had to slow down. The world stopped for a while. So I think that's when it really hit me, because I was stuck replaying these things in my head, and just so many quarantines. And eventually I'm just like, I'm not okay.
Yeah, no, that's,
and it, yeah.
So if you don't mind, the screen's just locked up, so we can't see your pretty
you're
face
frozen.
here. But,
well, we can see it. You're frozen.
You're just frozen.
Frozen in time, but it's Calgary, and you got snow right now, so you could be frozen.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's okay. No, everything else is going well. It's just
we're going to carry on.
Yeah,
Stephen,
absolutely.
He's working on things in the background here.
But that's cool.
I wanted to ask you. Sorry, Mike.
No,
I just
ahead.
wanted to ask you because I got to briefly meet up with you there, but I don't know what it was, 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah, something like that.
We did a Zoom call, and I got introduced to introduce yourself, and you shared some pretty incredible things. They're not that what we've talked about so far is not only just it's incredible, but thank you for sharing what you did, but. I think it's important if you're okay to talk about it that a little bit of the darker side of things where things just started not going so well for you while you're in these quarantines.
Yeah, sure. I think again it was sort of it amounted just like the tours and the scary situations overseas. Mm-hmm. I can't say that it was one particular. When I look back, there are certain scarier moments that stand out in my mind, but same with the quarantines. When they first began, I thought, I'm going to be fine. Like I'm fairly introverted, I'm used to doing these long tours on my own. My super social friends at home, like I was more worried about that. I thought, oh no, like they're used to seeing people all the time. I'm an introvert and I'm always traveling. I'm used to being on my own. I'm going to be okay. And then I'd had this yoga teacher training.
I was going to say you're an introvert. Yeah,
really?
Exactly.
Oh,
Step on the stage like that.
That's just blowing me out of the water that you're an introvert.
That's why I do it. That's why I do it though. I'm it's posing and being on stage is the worst part of it for me. And it's never gotten better. Like I cannot begin to tell you how much I dread that part. Like and anyone, like any of my coaches or good friends, they know me well. They know that is the hardest part for me. I could spend all day in the gym. I will train all day, all night, no problem. The food, it's challenging, but I'm used to it. It's been 10 years. But no, it's posing and like strutting it out on stage. Oh my gosh. I dread that. You have no idea.
Wow. That's funny because like you said, I'm the extrovert. I was the one that was always out all the time with clients and entertaining and traveling and everything else. And I needed people around doing trade shows. I needed people around all the time. And for 2 years to not be able to see people and not be able to get out, it was so hard. It was crazy. Yeah. Hence why I bought the motorcycle last summer. I thought, you know what? They can't shut the highway down.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just going to go ride. But, it's so,
Smart.
that's just who I became. That, get me out of here and just let me go do something. But, you blew me away too with the introvert of the whole macro. But yeah, that'd be tough.
People
so now
say
you're
that. I've heard that before, and it's so funny because it's actually even on social media. I know friends of mine that are like, you should. I mean, you've won all these shows, and you've got this cool story. You're traveling all the time. Like you should do more of this. Do more podcasts. Do more stories. You should tell your story more. And just like what I do put out there is kind of it takes me a while to grow into that. And I'm like, modeling is fine. I'll put the pictures up, whatever. But speaking my truth, like writing my story the way I did the other day, this is my very first podcast. These kind of things have been, I think that's been a lot harder for me to get around to for some reason. I don't know.
I know, I get it. And that's why we started this podcast. It was because I think all of our stories in some way connect us all. And there's somebody that's going to be watching this podcast or listening to this podcast and they're going, oh, that's me. That's me. I've got to step out. I've got to tell my story because when you keep that story in, it just beats you up. I mean, Bryan, you're forever. You'd never let go.
No, absolutely. I put the mask on and hit it pretty good. Well, I thought I was, anyways. The big story with that is, no, you're not really fooling anybody but yourself. So because, like I said, friends and family, our closest people are the ones that recognize first, and then it goes from there. But we sort of got off topic there a little bit, but. Let's go back to, let us know, or let the people know a little bit more about what happened to you.
Okay, well, so it was the introvert part that got us off. So I thought, because of that, I'm usually on my own overseas with either by myself or with, only, 4 other crew members type thing. So I'm used to this. And I had this yoga background. I'm also a yoga instructor. So I've done a few yoga teacher trainings over the years in India and Mexico and all that kind of stuff. And it's funny that you said, like, you asked me earlier about coping mechanisms. Well, I think a lot of it was fitness. But I started my yoga teacher training when I was in Sudan. So I left Sudan and went to India. And it wasn't until, years later that I thought, I was already kind of coping then, like not coping. I was already trying to without actually go see a psychologist. I was trying to do the inner work. Like that's what led me to India, led me to more of a deeper practice in yoga, in meditation. I even started hypnotherapy at one point, and I kept thinking, it's just for curiosity. It's just for my, fitness, self-love, all this. I just want to try all these different things, but really I wasn't ready to say it yet. But I was suffering with a lot more anxiety, PTSD. I just wasn't, it's like I hadn't kind of exploded yet. Like it's just, I was like slowly, okay, I'll start doing the work. And then through those quarantines, I thought, because I've got this practice, I've got this yoga and meditation, and I'm used to being on my own, I'm going to be fine. I've got to help others. I got to take care of others. And always had that mentality. Like I'm going to be okay. I'm a strong person, so I've got to take care of others.
I think that's a lot. Again, like we say, our stories connected so many ways. And that's, I'm the same way. I always want to make sure that everybody else is okay. Taking care of everybody else. And as we mentioned once before, on one of the other podcasts, my wife would come home after 2 years of working because she was in the ultrasound and fertility clinic. So she never missed a day of work the whole through COVID. And she'd come home and, how'd your day go? What'd you do today? And you start to feel guilty that, I didn't do anything. And I was beating myself up too. And I get that. I totally get that. So that's, our stories connect where I just want to make sure everybody else is okay and wasn't taking care of myself. And I saw that in Bryan as well. It was the gym. When I knew when he was going to the gym, I'd be there with him so that we could push the weights together, because that was his release point too, his place was the gym. Yeah. Bryan, you're in deep thought there. I am.
This. I'm in it, Julia. I don't mean this in a bad way. But I say this to everybody all the time that when I talk with the people at our place about self-love and taking care of yourself first, and it's ironic to me as the person you are and a flight attendant, and I tell people this all the time. Do you pay attention to the stewardess or steward that's up there at the start of your flight that says, when the oxygen mask falls out of the ceiling, make sure you put it on yourself first and then the other people. Yeah. And it just, it's funny, but it's not all at the same time. Because I say that, and here's you as a flight attendant wanting to make sure, in your own mental state that you're taking care of everybody else, when we got to take care of ourselves first.
Yeah. That's so true.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I love that quote. I always, of course, it applies so much with my job. Yeah. But I really noticed that this past year. And I think it was just getting to that point of, it was almost like there was some embarrassment around it too. Because everyone, even at my work, because at my work, we're all in these situations, right? We're there together. And we've all had different tours, and it's not all the exact same story. But I just thought, you even want to be tough around people that you work with, because, I don't want to complain. We're all there. We've all been through Kandahar. We've all been through rocket attacks. Like, we're tough, and I remember actually when I finally did admit it I admitted it to my boss first, and then, went through talking to HR and everything, and taking the time off and getting a psychologist and working through it. But during that, some of my friends, things would trigger me. So I had to mute, they're good friends still, but I muted most of my coworkers' accounts on any kind of social media, because I didn't want to see Africa or the Middle East or any of our tours. I didn't want to think about anything. I just wanted to work on getting better. So I muted everything, and I wouldn't reach out or talk to anybody that I worked with. Only a couple friends that knew what was going on, but I didn't want to reach out to others. I think out of embarrassment too, because it's no, they think I'm tough. They think I'm strong. I'm the only one in my company doing these shows and prepping for this while we're overseas. They think mentally, and physically I'm strong. They need me to be strong. Even my coworkers, I thought, no, I can't be the one to fall, So I just kept going, and I didn't say anything. And I remember one of the pilots wrote me when he found out, when I ended up admitting stuff, and I told him I was off work for a while and why. And he meant well. He's a really good friend. He said it, with love, but he's like, come on, we started together in Kandahar. And he's like, come on, you're Kandahar tough. You got this.
Yeah.
And he meant it in a way to help me and pick me up. But I was like, that's the problem. Mm-hmm. That's why I didn't come out and say anything, because I'm supposed to be Kandahar tough. I'm not I did. And it hit me then. It's he meant it out of love, but I was like, this is exactly the problem. And I'm not the only one feeling this way.
Nope.
Other people aren't admitting it, because they think, oh, I'm Darfur tough. I got this.
And that's the biggest thing. Yeah. People think, oh yeah, you've got this, but wow.
Julia, it's incredible. We set the show up for 30 minutes, and we've run out of the 30 minutes already. It's crazy. But listen,
we could keep rolling though. I'm just talking to Steven. Yeah, we're going to keep rolling, because I just want to finish up on a couple other points here, but that was so good. But one thing I do want to ask is, say everything you've gone through, and I mean, I've heard Bryan's stories, and when I say following you and hearing your story now too, and I as much as it was great to see you on the stage and the pictures of that and all that, but I know, and it's just because I've been around Bryan and so many others, I knew that there was another story, and I'm so I just got goosebumps right now thinking about the story you came out with. I'm so glad you did, because you are going to help so many people. You are going to help so many people with your story. It's so. But I got to ask, the show is called What's Next? So, what's next?
Well, since we talked about this and then we got sidetracked with that introvert part, I thought, to be totally honest, I think that this has made me realize how important it is. This isn't, social media. Sometimes a lot of people feel like, okay, it's all about showing off and everything to a point. And so, and that's, of course, that's what it has been in some ways, but using it to have a voice and to speak up and tell your story, and because you never know who it might help. There's so many other good purposes around why we have this social media, social outlet that we have. And though I've been introverted and nervous on stage, and nervous to anything interview wise or stories, any videos, that sort of thing, though I've held myself back, I'm realizing that any time that I speak up and I write my story, or I video or tell my story to anyone beyond just one-on-one with my clients, because of course I have Zoom one-on-one clients, and they're great, but whenever I have the guts to get out there and go on a video and or go on my Instagram or Facebook and tell more or write more, the people that it impacts and the people that write back and comment, like when I wrote the anxiety post, it took me a couple of weeks to get back to people, because I knew it was important, because everyone that wrote me was like, thank you. Yes. Like, this is what I'm going through. And so many people they poured their hearts out to me and told me their story. And I knew that was important, because though I'm not a psychologist, and I was like, guys, I'm not equipped to help you with this, but I knew it was important, because sometimes we tell our friends or our family or a stranger who's shared their story as the first step. Yep. And those people were writing me, and I was the first step. And they were like, okay, thank you for sharing your story. Cause now I feel like, it's a bit more normal, and I can take the next steps. And what did you do? Who did you talk to? How did you go about it? And I tried to, I did a live video, my very first live, and this is my first podcast, and I'm realizing this is what's next.
That's right.
Like I have to get over my own shyness. I have to, because whenever I do, it helps people, and it's important what we're doing right now.
Julia, how hard was it to come forward that first time and tell your story?
Oh, I was terrified. I mean, my sister, I'm staying with her right now because I have a place close by, but my mom's place flooded while I was on tour. So she is living in mine. So now we're all, so I was in Africa and she moved into my place. So now I'm staying with my nephews and, the dog, my sister. It's great. I love it. But yeah, my sister and I are really close. And she was commenting when I was writing that post, it took me the entire day. And I did it as a way in like therapy in a way for myself, but also knowing that other people needed somebody to speak up. Like even there were a couple even close friends and family in mind when I was writing it, because I knew that they were going through something too.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, okay, well, I'm going to normalize this a little bit more for you, because maybe they weren't ready to do it.
How many times did you look at the send button? Afraid to hit send.
Oh my gosh. You know what? I sent it. Well, my sister helped me edit it. She looked through it a few times. It was an entire day. I think I posted it the next day because I even sent it on to another friend and I was like, what do you think? Like because I was even worried for my work. I thought, okay, I don't want to out anyone. I don't want to point fingers. That's not what this is about. Nope. But I want people to, just erase the stigma and normalize it a little bit more and realize like it's okay to talk about these things. Exactly. And the vice president of my company actually saw it and was liking all the people's comments on it and stuff and wrote me privately. He's like, good for you. Like,
that's so
they
good.
Fully
to have that
supported
support,
it.
Yeah, that support.
Fully,
so needed.
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I wrote down a couple of things while you were talking there, and I just it's so what's the word I'm looking for here? But it just sheds so much light on what's going on right now. Like you mentioned about maybe the shame of coming forward with that, the fear of judgment from your coworkers or even friends and family, and the embarrassment that you feel is around that, when really there should be none of that, right? We should be able to just come forward and say, things aren't good for me right now. I'm not in a good place and I need some help, and have those people around you say, what can I do? Where can we go with this thing? And I think it's such a beautiful statement. I thank you for sharing that. It's takes a lot.
Yeah, and I love the part that you said it's sometimes not family, maybe it's a stranger, and that's what we're hoping this show does, because a lot of people won't talk to family because family thinks they're that incredible human being, and like you said, Kandahar strong. No, sorry, and it's sometimes that stranger, and we're hoping, like you said, all the feedback you got on your social media, and we're really hoping that this podcast can open somebody up to and say, "That's my story."
I love that.
That's my story.
I'm sure it will. I love that. Yeah.
So you're in a good place now, mentally, physically.
Well, I mean, I think that I can't say, that's the one thing. As I was writing it, I was telling my sister is like, I love that we have this closeness and she can just be raw and honest and be like, no, I was trying to, almost end the story, like put a spin on it. Like, oh, this is the past and I'm over it. And my sister's like, no, you're not over it. You're not. Don't even pretend you are.
Trying to be so strong.
You're better. Yeah, you've come through a lot. You're not, crying every day or having anxiety attacks every day, but you're better because you have some of the tools that you're using that you learned through that past year. You know what to do if this happens, and you took the time to heal, but it's still in you. I mean, you're never going to forget these things. Like, you went through some pretty tough times. So, my sister's like, stop it. Like, she made a really good point. She said, I actually hate watching or reading other people's social medias when it's like they feel like they have to put some fake positive spin on it, when it's okay to just like not be okay. Just say, hey.
Gee, I've heard that line before, Bryan.
Right?
It's okay to not be okay. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's like you can be working on it. I mean, you don't want to be a total downer. You don't want to write this and, have no happy outcome. You want to maybe say, I'm trying, I'm going through this, but no, there's not, it's still, I have to think about these things all the time. I have to think about, how I best take care of myself and then ultimately take care of my family and friends and everyone and my clients every day by doing the things that, make my day better. So I've got, certain things I have to do every day just to kind of kickstart my day well, and then beyond that, there's going to be things that happen in our lives for sure that we can't, control, that might derail how our day is going. But at least if I get up and I do my meditation, I spend my time with my family, I get that time in for my own physical health, like cardio, weights, whatever it might be, but those outlets and time outside, walking, sunshine, all of that. If I do at least those things, that makes my day so much better.
You're giving yourself a head start. Yeah,
right.
A good start.
So much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Bryan, I got to be honest with you. I see part 2 coming up.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because we're going to get you right out of your show, girl, because you are just so incredible. I love this. And we're going to get your sister on with you. So get her ready. It'll be the tag team sisters on this one. But because I'd love to hear exactly like her too. Like I say, I watch Bryan go through this and I'm on the other side watching and learning myself. And I'm sure your sister is doing the same thing, learning through this whole thing, but just wanting to be there and not knowing, because we say when it's silent, it's time to listen. And a lot of times we just don't know what we can do to help. So it'd be great to have your sister on with you too. That'd be really cool. And the dog and your nephew and, the whole family.
I think the dog and nephews wouldn't be so difficult. My sister, that'll be a tough one for you guys. I don't know.
No, and from me to you, I really appreciate you sharing your story, being with us here today, and being honest and open and letting people know, because every day can't be a good day. That's just simply the way it is. And there's days that I really struggle. And there's days that, hey, the switch is on and I'm ready to go and everything's good. And then there's those days that are just not there. And at least I've developed an awareness of that. At least I've accepted that it's okay to not be okay. I truly have accepted that. And it's okay to say that you were wrong too. You were wrong in so many aspects, wrong in not identifying it, wrong how you interacted with friends and family, and hopefully that can be all corrected. I'm sure it can. But no, beautiful story, and it's so enlightening. I think you've really. And not even knowing, that's what, as you said, Mike, that's what we're hoping to do at the show, is bring beautiful stories like this to let others know that, it's time to get up. It's time to get up. Right. It's time to tell that story, and it's time to be honest and go, no, this fell apart and I fell apart and whatever fell apart, and I'm working on building that back up again.
It's part of the healing. It's absolutely part of the healing. I mean, you've got to. You can't stay there. So these incredible stories. I mean, again, we connect each other, which we didn't realize we could, but all of our stories connect some way. Yeah. And we want to thank you. This is our first show. We've got you on with us, which is incredible. This has been, man, oh man, I don't know how we're going to top this one.
Well, I guess we better ask you, how do we do?
Did we do okay?
Oh, great. Of course.
You're okay? Yeah. You'll come back if we ask you to come back?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah. Guys, I'm no expert. This is my first show too. but I love it. And I felt really comfortable, and cool. I would love to come back. Yeah. This has been great. So thank you for making my first podcast actually such a great experience. So,
when are you on the plane heading back over there?
I'm not actually sure. It might be in 2 or 3 weeks, early May. Okay. But I'm going to find out if I'm going back to the same location. I was in Tunisia last, or if there might be somewhere else, and it could change time. Okay. The time frame. Yeah, I might stay home longer if it's possible, but I don't know.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, we'll reach out definitely.
Couple weeks.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Listen, it was fantastic having you on. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
And if we don't talk to you before you leave, fly safe.
You bet. Take care of you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you all being on the show with us today.
Yes, sir.
And peace. We're out of here.
We'll see you, Julia.
Take care.
Bye.